Hello, folks out there in retro TV land. This is a live transmission. We are the Trampled Underfoot Podcast show, and your hosts are Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajero. This is a brand new year. I don't know necessarily what that means other than it's a brand new year, but we have revolved around the sun once again. So that's a good thing if you consider, I don't know, the continuation of the things that we do, like moving around on this plane of existence.
Yeah.
So we'd like to welcome you back. What's going on?
Yeah, we made it around the sun without getting wiped out by a planet-sized asteroid of some sort. So far so good. It's going to be a good day. Going to be a good year. I mean, you got to keep that optimism up because it can always be worse.
I'll just say this: it'll be how it's gonna be with
True.
with certain influence as far as we're capable of as individuals, and then on the larger scale as a group. But remember, like George Carlin once said, the Earth considers you a nuisance.
Hmm.
I don't know what was the whole saying.
A
He's like,
surface nuisance.
yeah,
It has survived a lot worse than us.
yeah. So within the power of, and we're not speaking to our necessarily our well, we are speaking to our listeners, but just in the with the idea of that whoever listens to it, we do what we do and what we can, but
Hmm.
don't think, or think if you want, but you're only capable of so much. So if you're wanting to tie yourself to trees, chain yourself to trees in order to, that might be a thing for you, and we'll see how
Hmm.
that turns out. I'm neither against it or for it, but consider the
I,
greater implications.
I'm just going to say enjoy yourself because I'm going to be busy, going to the restaurant and going grocery shopping and sitting here in my comfortable climate controlled little home and not sweat it, you know.
We did try paper bags again,
Yeah,
and so
I
things
don't,
like
you know
that.
what? This is totally completely off the subject, but I had kind of forgotten how much of a pain in the butt paper bags were,
Yeah.
you know. But oh well, no biggie. We should go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and that is where the hell have we been? Blame me. It's all my fault, 100%.
Absolutely.
I'll go ahead and go through the entire story for those who don't know. On December 10th, I went in for some major dental work. I had 22 teeth pulled all at the same time and temporary dentures put in. And that's why I sound a little different because I'm still learning them. And my mouth is healing up and changing. That went just fine. So that's been what, 24, 25 days ago. We got home at about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there. And that evening, about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, my wife just started feeling rough, really bad. And to make a long story short, we both came down with COVID, the Omicron variant, and that it hit her harder than it hit me. Neither one of us needed hospitalization, but she got hit really hard and she slept for about 10 days. I'll just say it that way. I don't mean she slept the whole way through. I mean, sleep for 6, 7, 8 hours, wake up for a half hour, back to sleep for 6, 7, 8 hours. Running a fever anywhere from 99 to 100. I don't know if she got up to 101. I don't think so, but she got close. And it hit her hard. Me, on the other hand, let's say, I want to say the following Tuesday, I started feeling bad. And For me, it was more like just a cold that wasn't quite a cold. And it lasted about 2 weeks, which is not normal for a cold for me. Usually 5 to 7 days, and that's it, it's over with. This hung on. And as she was getting better, I kind of maintained that plateau. And she slept, like I said, for about 9 to 10 days. And then she started getting up for longer. But it disrupted our sleep patterns to the point to where we're still not 100% back to normal. Because, like, I would be up for 3, 4 hours, then I was asleep for 6 or 8, and then up for 2 or 3, and then back to sleep for 6 or 8. So there was no daytime or nighttime. It's just I'm up. It's 2 in the morning. Oh well. Then back to sleep at 5, and then get up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Something like that. It was just weird. We did not need to be hospitalized. We were able to treat here at home. We were told what to watch out for as far as symptoms. And if we started getting any of these symptoms, go to the hospital. And that never happened for either one of us. But I'm here to tell you, it knocked her into the dirt. With me, it was just a big pain in the butt, you know? And it was just something that would not go away. Now it's been about 3 weeks now for both of us. Her a little bit longer. We're still not up to 100%. I'd say we're maybe at 95%, but we still wear out real quick. We go grocery shop and come home, we're beat. It's time to lay down for a little bit. So it does take the wind out of your sails really fast. But we're both just, other than wearing out quicker, we're both okay. So that's where I've been. That's why we haven't been doing this podcast, is because I physically could not sit down at the computer in front of the microphone and talk with Eloy. I kind of disappeared for a while.
Yeah.
So we don't know where we got it. We don't know how we got it. We kind of have a couple of suspicions, but we don't know.
Did you take a trip to Wuhan by any
chance? No, we didn't go to China. We haven't left the country. Haven't left the state. Who am I kidding? I very rarely leave the house. But, we go out. We go shopping. We do various thises and that's. I got to say that this whole COVID thing has changed my behavior a little bit, in that I got used to not going into the restaurant, sitting down and eating there. I got used to calling ahead or ordering online and going and picking it up. And I kind of like that. I'll get what I want to drink when I want to get it. I'm not waiting on somebody to come along and, pour me coffee. Now, it did disrupt the holidays. We didn't get to go over to my daughter's house for Christmas or anything like that. And we're old people. We stay home for New Year's anyway. We haven't done anything special for New Year's in probably 20 years. But, so we still have all the Christmas presents for our kids and grandkids here. Everything that needs to go out in the mail is going out in the mail. That's fine. But it's the family that we have here. Basically, we're giving ourselves another week, and then we'll all get together and, do the Christmas present thing. But we're trying to do the right thing in that we stay home as much as humanly possible, so we don't spread it around, But that's where I've been. So
it is insane. Yeah, it's insane.
I don't
know how much I can comment, other than thank goodness that you have gotten to the other side of that and are leaving it behind, as far as the greater implications and subjects that we We since we can't necessarily with impunity, or is it without impunity? Without impunity, with impunity,
with impunity.
we can't necessarily expand. So our we have to understand that our thoughts, if they're independent of a standardized notion, could lead to terrible consequences in the world around us. And so we must be contained. So we can't necessarily speak out because there are agents and bots out there that are keeping the world in line. But if I had to say one thing, it would be that thank goodness for the human spirit of rebellion, um, and conformity.
Well,
In fact, thank goodness for the human spirit of their conscience and their journey through life, regardless of whether one agrees or not.
I think this is all just a part of being decent. I mean, I know I'm sick, I stay home. But I've been like that forever. I was never one of those guys who said, "Oh, yeah, I know I've got the flu, but I'm going to work anyway." Bull. Why do you want to give it to everybody you work with? Keep your butt at home, get well, then come back. Why do you want to give it to me? So I can give it to my kids or my wife? Come on.
You've never heard of the saying "misery loves company"?
I've heard of the saying false macho, false bravado. You don't got to prove yourself. You don't have to prove you're a man to me by working sick. All you've proven is that you're an idiot. Go home and get better.
Well,
Quit infecting everybody you work with.
luckily there's now, because of all of the things that we've experienced, there's now a certain new category called work from home, which has been augmented from the limited jobs that did
Mm-hmm.
that in the past. Now there's a bigger sort of it encompasses more
Yes.
disciplines out there.
Yes. And there are a lot of companies that, when they discovered how well that worked for them, they now give people the option, because a lot of the restrictions have been lifted, of course, depending upon where you live, that people can go back to work now. But a lot of companies are giving their employees the options. Look, if you want to continue to work from home, go for it. Productivity actually went up with people working from home. They might not have been sitting down at their desk, from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening, but they found that people were actually getting more done and getting more accomplished because there were fewer distractions. They didn't have the commute. They didn't have a whole bunch of other, you know, problems that you wouldn't think would affect work. They didn't have that to consider anymore. I mean, they would just do their job, get done what they needed to get done, and a little bit more usually. Productivity went up, and the employers were like, this is great, you know.
Yeah, well,
So
I mean,
not all of them did it, of course, and not everybody can or wants to work from home. Some people do want to go to the office. But I think if you're given the option and you like that and it works for you and it works for your employer, why not?
you know who it doesn't work for?
Yeah, plumbers, electricians, tradespeople.
That is,
you know,
those are included. But who who else? People that have this sort of bully and domineering, and like those people that love intimidation and stuff, like the in order to, because I've been through so many jobs and seen the psychology of people and stuff, even if I wasn't actively aware as I was growing up. But once you start to see patterns, you start to realize people love power.
oh yeah,
And you'll see a lot. So all the type of, in those situations where people are working from home, they probably started to realize that they don't have to deal with power,
yeah,
the
and
power shifts and whatnot and all that crap.
and and that was addressed too in one report that I saw. Not so much the bullying aspect, but the intimidation factor of people not feeling intimidated, not thinking their boss is looking over their shoulder, and not, having to go punch the clock and they got to be here on time. And oh my gosh, I'm going to be 5 minutes late for work. All of that stuff was gone, was lifted. And that was one of the reasons they cited for productivity going up. People could actually do their job with fewer distractions and could focus a lot better. And, not every job, obviously not every job is conducive to that. You can't fix somebody's faucet from home. You have to go to their house. But if your job entails a lot of computer work, sure, you can do that at home. And thankfully, both of us are retired. So, it was just more or less. I'm a hermit anyway. I'm here all the time. If I go to medical appointments if I have one, and I go to the store to resupply, and that's about it. I mean, I couldn't tell you how much a gallon of gas is because my wife fills up the car when on her way past the gas station when she goes to band practice or to her bagpipe instructor's house. She fills up the car. I haven't filled up the car in months. I couldn't tell you what gas was a gallon. So that's how much of a hermit I am. She's a lot more of the social butterfly, but then she's only gone 2 days a week, So I don't know. It's weird. It's easy for me to self-isolate because I don't go anywhere, I guess is what I'm saying. But I'm not infecting anybody else that way. So, and I figure it this way. Now I've got super antibodies. So I shouldn't get the Delta or the original. But, we'll see. So, other than that, it's just been more or less business as usual here. I mean, a lot of sleeping, but trying to keep up with correspondence and trying to arrange this and getting back into the podcast and getting back into my YouTube schedule and trying to get back to work. But I'm noticing I wear out a lot faster than normal.
I've heard that from other people that have gone through anybody that I've had any sort of connection to in my personal experience. And that's the key, my personal experience, which by default means that somebody else's personal experience may be the same or may differ. So clarifying that. But what I've seen from people that I know that have had to go through it, they've basically experienced what you are saying right now.
Yeah. And everybody that I've talked to that's had it before us has said the same thing, and that it does wear you out. And that can last a couple of months. But, people are people and everybody's a little bit different. A mutual friend of ours and yours and mine, and his wife got it last year at about this time. And he is pretty much, other than his other health issues, he's pretty much recovered from the COVID, but it affected his wife differently. And he and I were chatting during a live stream on YouTube. Been about a week now, maybe. In that, with his wife, we never lost the sense of taste or smell, but her sense of taste changed. He said something about his wife, and he both found things to be too salty. And my wife immediately said I had the same thing. And I remember her saying something to me about, oh, this is salty. And I'm thinking to myself, this is my wife, the woman who put salt on her salt, has said something is too salty, something's going on. Well, our friend said that his wife, her sense of taste has never fully recovered. It's changed. His hasn't. I never lost, sense of taste or smell. I never ran a fever. It was just this. I felt like I had a chest cold. I felt, congested and head loading up and everything. But it wasn't a chest cold in that it just lasted so ding dong long. So I ain't take any chances. Just assume, you know, and that's what the doctor said. Assume that you have it, treat for it, because even if you come up negative on a test, nothing in your treatment is going to change. If you don't have, and he gave us this list of things to watch out for, if you don't have any of those things, you can treat yourself at home. Nothing will change. You're basically treating the symptoms because that's all they can do. But if it's not worthy of hospitalization, don't take up a bed somebody needs.
You
And
know how
go down there and give it to people who don't have it. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, um there's so many thoughts, there's so many thoughts. But so I think that this episode is a good contender thus far for one of those fat labels being slapped on the bottom third of the screen that says go visit your localized or go visit your National Institute of disease control and blah blah blah.
maybe, but you know what? I don't even look at that, and I don't think most folks look at it. I really honestly think by now, I mean, we're talking about coming up on 2 years, real quick. By now, if you don't know where and how to get a vaccine, you're not trying. You don't want one, or you don't care. Everybody has to evaluate their own lives, whether or not they go get vaccinated. But even those who are vaccinated are getting the Omicron variant. And in fact, the majority of the people who have gotten the Omicron variant are vaccinated and have had all the boosters. The thing is, they'll put the tag down there underneath the video here on YouTube, and that's fine. That's their prerogative to do it. But I think it's just another one of those that's going to get ignored. The little X is going to get clicked, and if somebody wants to leave a comment, they'll leave a comment. The information is out there, is what I'm saying. You know where to go to get vaccinated. So talk with your doctor, and if it's right for you, get it done. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. Talk with your doctor.
Well, that's my point.
That's nobody else's decision to make. That's your decision to make after consulting with your doctor.
Yeah, but see that's that. So the reason I understand that by this
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
like you just said, the information is quite abundant in order for one to
I think people are just war weary, battle fatigue. We've been doing this for 2 years, and folks are, you can see the eye rolls. Folks are tired of it. They really are. They're just tired of it.
But my insistence on the point um, is not to do necessarily with what you've mentioned in that yes we do know
Mhm.
where to acquire the vaccine and this and that.
Mhm.
It's to do with the act of in be a third party inserting itself into a broad. Go ahead.
I don't have a problem with it because I think two things are going on. I think number one, they have to cover their tails. Number two, they think they're doing the right thing. So it's like, fine, I can ignore that just as easy as anybody else can. So, you know, great, terrific. Sure. There's a little thingy underneath our. We had one when we did the talked about the lizard people and David Icke and what have you. There was a link that YouTube put right below the video panel
I like that.
that was talking about, the lizard people. Conspiracy theory is this, that, and the other. Click here for more information. And I guess that's their way of, I don't know, kind of the way I look at it is that's kind of like that disclaimer. The views expressed by this podcast are not necessarily those of the management or the sponsors of kind of a thing. Well, they're saying this. We're going to say this. Because you and I both know they didn't listen to that podcast. If they did, they wouldn't have put that there.
Can I say
Go ahead.
my problem? Not taking away anything that you said, because I agree, but the act of a third party within a conversation inserting itself. So it's like if you and I are here talking right now, and we do have third parties inserting themselves called our guests, or I'm sorry, our visitors and viewers, and there's a panel for that. So there is the notion of this, but the organization itself, but the assumption is that we are experiencing communication with human beings in a social way, and there's a set of, how could I say?
There's a protocol?
No, I'll say it this way. In the course of a conversation between, as an example, it could be anything else other than what I'm saying. In the course of a conversation between two people throughout the year, there are a whole host of different topics that are obvious or implied or just under the surface and so on within the natural course of human beings' conversations.
Right.
We've done it today here, even without thinking about it, because we're human beings and we're not just, it's not just Eloy saying what he's saying, but there's also other layers, and humans pick up on all these subtleties and stuff. So there's the human experience. I guess they have specific focal points on what they want to insert themselves into, but there's a whole host of other subjects that could be balanced. I think the insertion of these huge platforms into private conversations in that way, in specific ways, on specific topics, indicates a top-down focus on their part to sort of curtail misinformation in their view.
Well, yeah,
this is let me just say this little sort of tail off of it. But the problem is that there's also the act of the platformation of people, especially well-known people, that people go and view their content that are not the standardized. And so there's a concept of that humans, is it true that humans are so gullible, period? And therefore these huge platforms are a only hope to sort of like cradle humanity into the right direction according to their truth knowledge? Or is it more true that human beings are stubbornly impossible, and these things only create suspicion?
but
There's all these
but I
problems.
don't think they think that far. I think, like I said, and you mentioned in your first statement where you were saying that they're trying to get the truth out there in their view. That's what I mean when I say covering their tail, because there are certain issues. It is, especially in today's climate, it's perceived that if you don't say something, that means you agree. Your silence is an acknowledgement. So that's what I mean when I say they have to cover their tails. If they don't put that little thing down there, Because remember what was going on when you and I were talking about the lizard people. There was a whole big thing about conspiracy theories, and the whole fact checker thing started up. And YouTube, that was part of their little fact checker thing, was not to say that this was true, not to say that this was false, but to say, for more information, go here. Let you make up your own mind. That's kind of covering their tails. Well, they've established that pattern. Now it's another case of they have to do it to keep up appearance.
Right, but
But because I don't think there's anything you or I are going to say at this point, almost 2 years in, I don't think there's much that you, or really anything that you and I could say that would talk somebody into or out of any decision, except don't put your finger in the fireplace. I'm telling you, don't put your finger in the fireplace. If you haven't gotten a vaccine by now, it's not because of anything you or I said. If you got the vaccine by now, it's not because of anything you or I said. We're not encouraging, we're not discouraging. You know,
there are there.
but
Go ahead, go ahead.
because we have said that now, we've increased the likelihood that we will get that little information tag down below saying, for more vaccine information, go here. You know, but
So,
I don't think
go
we've done anything wrong. You know,
what do you mean wrong?
well, I mean, by them putting that little thing down below, I don't think that we've done anything wrong. So it's not a punishment. It's just a cover their tail kind of a thing. Like I said, that's
Right.
my opinion. I could be wrong. So
No, I don't disagree with, but I'm so everything you said, like these are things that I agree with that they're trying to cover, but but there's other things to this situation. It's not just that and that's it. It's not just
oh
that and that's it,
no. Oh no,
because
I don't believe that either. I think there's an agenda behind it as well. And there's an agenda behind the whole fact checker thing anyway.
okay,
But you and
so
I have talked about that already. So
okay, so if so so this particular subject has a focus on it. There are many subjects, and so somebody or a group of people, there had to be a decision to create the algorithm, to create the, and
mhm,
I'm not even arguing on what their ultimate intent, goal slash whatever is. I'm just saying
yeah.
that the simple act
Mhm,
of there being uncountable topics that are, depending on who you talk to, more or less popular and controversial, more or less. There's a
mhm.
spectrum of all these different topics on Earth,
Yeah,
in the human mind,
sure.
uncountable. Um, that they have a specific focus on certain things, and these certain things or topics are topics that also ride next to side with cultural, media points,
Mhm,
political ones,
sure.
psychological ones. So you don't get. So if you if so if you remember, so two things. One, um, accompanying all this is the banning of people for saying things that work against a certain narrative.
Mhm,
And it's usually people of great influence with alternative views from an established media or an established top down,
mhm.
which that whole concept of restricting people that are off the farm, let's say, from the main, storyline,
Yeah.
getting banned and getting all these things, um shows whether it's just on automation or if it's one guy with a pencil thin mustache doing it, like putting aside the fact of maliciousness and this and that, but one can conclude many things, because regardless of whether it's intent or not intent, the results are that people that talk different,
Mm-hmm.
think different, and have a substantial amount of viewership
Mm-hmm.
get the whip. Um, and it just so happens that it's contrary to an established narrative that we're the consideration is that we should all fall in line to. So there's a by
Well,
doing that, by curtailing or diminishing alternate views and alternate imaginations that could be completely wrong and crazy, but by doing that, there's an implication that humans, and they could be gullible, but I don't think that that's 100% thing to slap on to the human, experience, human race. But regardless, there's an intent to um, sort of steer humanity in this way, if not completely, but there's an intent to steer into a belief, into an idea, into falling in line, and it chills conversation. And
well,
and there I have so just observation of what it's produced by. So you could slap it on. You
well,
could slap a tag on the lizard people or this kind of thing, and you could slap it on everything, because everything is liable to fall into the category of the human experience of conversation where truth
okay,
and non-truths exist.
okay. But my rebuttal to that is it's a private platform. They have a set of standards and guidelines. If you do not have a right to be on the platform. They have the right to ban whoever they want to. If you violate those standards and those guidelines, you're probably going to be gone. They're not here for us to have a conversation. They're here to make money. That's the bottom line. They're here to make money. And the way they do that is putting ads on your videos. And I'm talking specifically about YouTube. By putting ads on those videos and getting those videos in front of as many eyes as they possibly can. That's their whole reason for living. Everything else they do is geared toward more of that. And if you rock the boat in a way that brings bad attention to them, then yeah, you're gone. There is a little bit of we have an agenda and you're going to toe our line. Not so much on this platform as there are on the other big ones, Facebook and Twitter. If you don't toe their line, chances are you're gone. No matter how many followers. But they're in a position to where they're going to get the ad revenue anyway. Facebook and Twitter are not content driven. YouTube is content driven. Without content, there's no advertisers. With no advertisers, there's no money. So they have a certain set of standards they want you to follow. And if you follow those standards, you're fine. And we are following their standards. So that's my only rebuttal to that, is that at the end of the day, it's a private platform. We don't have any constitutional right to be here. We're here at their pleasure. And that's basically it. I mean, there may be a social engineering aspect to that, but the point remains it's a private platform and they'll do what they want within the law.
So, I don't disagree with that because it's obvious that that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the analysis of what happens by doing what they do creates. So, if there's no intent to dissuade people from thinking, just don't talk about that because that's adverse to our advertising, that doesn't consider that people love controversy, whether true or not, and so
but
on, and all
but
this and
they
that.
don't. But again, they
Well,
don't.
let me finish my
But
thing
again, they
because
don't
my
care about
idea.
that. Go
My,
ahead.
no, go ahead and say that again.
They don't care about that. They care about what the advertisers say. So if General Motors says we're not advertising our trucks on this channel, that's
Yeah.
when they worry.
Right. No. Let's. I agree with you.
Mhm.
I'm not. So put that to the side. I agree
Mhm.
with that.
Okay.
Right. We understand that they're making money, and that if the advertisers aren't pleased, because it's gonna,
Mhm.
because in their, even if it's not true, if the advertisers perception is that this doesn't work with their advertising, even if it's not true, even if it does work with their advertising and it would bring them money, but they perceive it as such, and they give the key
Right.
saying no. So I understand all that, so I agree with you. What I'm saying is that this is not as useful in the world of cut and dry. This is more of an observation. So
Mhm.
just to separate that from the reality of it's a
Okay.
business, like you said. So there's no other way that one can look at the cut and dry. It's a business, and it needs to make money. But on the perception side of what the customer, or what the viewer, or what the public at large, just human beings in general, um, their ability to collate information, and the very awkward and uncomfortable problem that humans have, um, in that you can have a truth and you can have a falsehood, and a human being can either understand that a truth, this is truth and this is a falsehood. One human being can understand this is truth and
Yeah.
this is falsehood, and another human being can understand this is truth and this is falsehood, and one under and then out of those two, they'll say this is truth, so I'm going to go ahead and go with truth. But the other human being could just as well say, I understand that this is truth and this is falsehood, but screw that, I don't care. I'm going to go with the falsehood, and you can take it to the bank that that's where I'm going. And
Okay.
so
Sure, that
humans,
happens.
and then there's other third, to be fair, where they don't know what the heck is going on a certain given topic,
Hmm.
and then there's layers of that. And at the end of the day, just taking one human being and compounding that into like the world population of people that view
Hmm.
YouTube and experience social media and all that,
Sure.
it's so humans are so complicated, and to assume that a certain push forward is not going to receive a push back from in other words, I guess it goes back to what you said in the beginning, which I think is no matter what amount of, by this time now, most people know where to get their
Hmm.
injection and this and that.
Hmm.
No amount of already, people figure out what they want to do
Yeah.
regardless of
Yeah.
their position. But it does create more pushback in the people that are prone to be against, like, let's say, censorship. And notwithstanding what you said is correct, this is a
Hmm.
private platform, and if right now they could turn off the lights right now and go click, and
Yep.
there is no two ways
Yeah.
about it. It's the But notwithstanding, um you know humans, the idea of socially controlling humans, I can see, this is abstract, within the thing. I can see it as feasible using these methods, these tools that everybody's on, plus government incentive to push that, plus private incentive. I could see that the movers and shakers can sway populations, because we've seen it for the past 2 years. But within those populations, there's a certain amount of people that just can't be fixed.
Right. And it's not anybody's job to try to fix them. Believe me, if you want to learn about the lizard people, you don't need Eloy, you don't need Mark, and you don't need YouTube with their little thing under our video to tell you where to go to find the lizard people. If you are interested in that, you're already interested in that. There is nothing that either one of us can say that's going to change someone. Oh, well, I was going to go look into that, but now never mind. That's just not going to happen. I really, really seriously doubt it. If anything, it's going to make people either like us or not. We're not doing anything to further the controversy. We're not doing anything to further the conspiracy. We're not saying yes. We're not saying no. We're saying you be the judge.
I'll give a further. Let me give this example that is different from a different point in time in history, but I think there might be some to the. Well, no, I know that there's a little something to it. The Kennedy assassination occurred a long time ago,
Right.
back in the 60s.
Right.
There was an official commission. There was a conclusion to that, a conclusion made that was the official conclusion, and
The Warren Commission, yeah.
the Warren Commission and the government said, well, this is the thing. And then the newspaper said, this is the thing. In theory, they reported what the thing was from the official government thing. And then you had what happens, in my opinion, with everything. And remember, this is back in the 60s, and we're here in 2022. And I believe strongly that it happens with everything. That regardless of the official money paid through our taxpayer dollars, the whole process of studying the situation and coming to that conclusion, regardless of that, you ended up with editorialized conspiracies to the extent that you ask people on the street, regardless of the official government explanation, which they spent a lot of time, effort, and money in arriving at. You have movies, books, media, films, all sorts of people that are just saying, nope, the government is full of it.
But you're going to have that with everything. I mean, you and I were in a hangout last night with Greg, the Snow Crusher. And he said something about Americans being suspicious of the government. And I said, yeah, that's an American trait. If the government tells me the sky is blue, I'm going to go outside and verify it for myself, because there's been too many times I've had to shovel 6 to 8 inches of partly cloudy off of my front porch. So if I'm skeptical, I don't automatically say BS. I'm skeptical. Remember Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. And that's all I do. But that's my own cynicism based on.
I love how you called out Greg publicly.
But it's
on that.
well, no, I didn't call it out. I just, I mentioned a friend and I said him by name. But he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, but he brought up a valid point.
No, but if I were a platform that promoted strict and pure American home pie values, and he came with his thing, I may not ban him, but I will slap a big fat,
that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
No,
but anyway,
but if I had so me as a proxy for the regular Joe out there, if given power to control newspapers, you said it yourself, any position of power, the narrative sort of focuses in on whatever those people, regardless of ill intent, which that comes into the personal analysis, but people tend to focus on what they are focused on, and they miss out on all the side issues that other people, when you deliver an information to someone, other people outside will start to tear that apart, because they see with their eyes different things coming from that. And because of the nature of that, it's a never-ending sort of like revolving, sort of like never finished project, the human thinking and experience. It's a never ending thing.
And the biggest problem with that, the number one problem that I have with that is we're ego driven. I don't care if you've got high self esteem or low self esteem. We are ego driven creatures. My problem with that comes in if it's an analysis of fact and laying out the facts, that's one thing. But when people start thinking that they are smarter, they have to be smarter than the people who are doing it. Like we have, there you will find channels on YouTube where you've got armchair quarterbacks second guessing Eisenhower and Roosevelt and Churchill during World War II. Well, Eisenhower should have done this, that, and the other. It's egotistical to, number one, think you're smarter than Eisenhower. Number two, to think you know more than Eisenhower when you weren't even there and you didn't know what he was facing coming in from all these different directions. You have the luxury of hindsight. He didn't have the luxury of foresight. He didn't know what was going to happen on June 6, 1944. So on June 3rd and 4th, he was a nervous wreck. Now, we can look back and say, well, why is he so afraid? Well, quite easily. He didn't know if all the deceptions had worked. He didn't know if he was walking into a trap and sending millions of people to their death.
Let me add something that's going to be awesome.
So to automatically think you are smarter than him
is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Let me add something right now that's good, because it reminded me, and I agree with you pretty much 100% because it's a big problem. But let me add this. The other day I saw just bear with me, but this is exactly what you're talking about. The other day I saw a movie. I forget the darn name of the movie, but unfortunately, but it was a really good movie, where a lady was stuck. A lady was taken to a cabin in the woods by her husband on an anniversary type thing, and she wakes up tied to the bed, and the dude shoots himself. And she's not tied to the bed. She's tied to her husband with handcuffs. And he shoots himself, and he's dangling on the bed, and she's attached to him in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. And she's like, what the hell just happened? And she's freaking out and this and that. She proceeds to try to get herself, and the body to a phone. He cut the phones. She goes to the car dragging the body. The car has the CD playing, and it says, "Hello, darling." And he explains why he did what he did, because he had caught her doing some not so nice things with a handsome bloke. And the story just unfolds, and it's a very great story. Well, I said, I was curious because I really thought it was great. I mean, it's not like, it's like studying Roman history or this or that. I mean, it's a great story and whatever. It's just a great story.
It's fiction.
It's fiction. So, so I decided to watch a review on it on YouTube, because I like to do that sometimes, just to see that what my thinking on something is, what another person's thinking is, just to get a gauge on that, just to see where I'm at. And I went to a review, and the guy in the review, the movie that I thought was great, thought it was the most unbelievable, ridiculous, stupid thing in the world. And to go to what you're saying, he said that he couldn't imagine why she wouldn't have just broken the dead man's thumb and pinky, removed the cuff, and freed herself. The movie would have been over in 2 seconds. Get this. And then I looked in the comments.
There's your answer right there.
Hold on. And I went down into the comments, and I saw all sorts of similar things. Well, if I were there, I would have done this. And if I were there, I would have done that. And I'm saying these, and they were all dudes, apparently. They suffered from the issue that you were mentioning. But in the context of this, just to wrap this thing up, they were assuming it. ridiculously if they were in that situation, but they're not putting themselves in the lady's shoes. A lady, maybe she doesn't have the consideration of the thumb pinky situation and this,
Well,
and plus her body is small. They did not
well,
consider putting themselves in her shoes, and they were Monday morning quarterbacking.
exactly. And every single one of them, every one of them is lying. None of them know what they would have done in that situation. Not a one. And we have history that proves that. Some of the most meek, mild, unassuming people you would have ever thought of have turned out to do some very heroic acts. I mean, Audie Murphy, the most decorated man of World War II, very unassuming guy. You wouldn't expect him to be a Medal of Honor holder. I mean, that's just one example. People don't know what's going to happen until they're thrust into that situation. And we only hear about the people who survive. We never hear about the ones who fail. So, what can you say? But that is part of the problem, is second guessing the people who were there with the benefit of hindsight and thinking you're more intelligent than they are. That's part of the problem. That's a big part of the problem.
There is
But,
also
what can you say?
to be fair, there is also a place for that too. As long so there is even a place for those people in reflecting on the past, and well, strategically, if this would have happened, that could have happened. So there's a world for
Right.
that in books and analysis, as long as go ahead.
But there's a difference between analysis and the automatic gainsay of every decision this person made.
Right.
Well, he should have done this and he should have done that, and I would have done bull. You wouldn't have done anything.
Right.
You
We
would
don't
have
know.
taken the information he had available to him at the time, and you would have made a decision based on that.
Right. And plus, if
You know.
if you're it's just all circumstances
Mhm.
would vary, just the sheer fact that you're not the same person, not the same size, not the same
Sure.
sex, not the same condition, just a whole host of things. But so the idea of them omitting those variables
Mhm.
in their comment shows uh, laziness
Mhm.
in typing out something and then moving along, because
Well,
it's not that important to them necessarily. Maybe it's just a brief walk in the woods and they said, oh yeah, I saw the movie, it was ridiculous, and then they moved on to something else. But here comes another party
but
looking
then
at what
you
here
have to
comes a
take
here
then
comes
you
an
have to take herd mentality into it, because people like to join the popular herd. And if 150 people are trashing this movie and all you saw was this guy's review, let's
yeah.
jump on and be one of the cool kids.
So what I was going to say, you have these people writing that out and they completely think, oh yeah, of course this movie completely sucks and I would have
Mhm.
done this and that, and then they move on to whatever else they're doing. And that's the importance, because there's also the focal point of importance that people put. So you could have two people, and that's the problem with human beings. You could have two people about the Kennedy assassination. One person is like reading books and studying details and stuff, and the other person is just a casual
Mhm.
observer of of the history of it.
Right.
And they come into it and they just say, oh yeah, this happened, and then the one guy moves along, the other guy says, yeah, but there's also this to consider, that to consider. And so these are two different um
Sure.
distance analysis of something. The one guy is a sort of a casual kind of observer, and the one other person is a little bit more, I guess, steeped into the world of that. And if you multiply that from topic to topic across
Sure.
the board or across humanity, on any given issue, you now find yourself in front of the most impossible, complex
Mhm.
culture, and race of beings, that you could ever possibly imagine. So the idea of, you know, this is a certain truth and whatnot, requires all sorts of interaction from people and responses from people, and so it's an ever changing or it's a battle, you know. But um, so yeah, without contemplating, you know, you'll arrive at an idea and a conclusion, and you could be right without the extra stuff.
Mhm.
But some people favor, like I do, a little bit more in-depth analysis. But there's people that really go deep, like the people that actually
Sure.
studied the Warren Commission word by word. And, like, you know,
Yeah.
there's all these levels occurring, and so humans are impossible. My point is that humans are actually, and you can control them a little bit in certain ways with branding, because people sort of get a hint. But for everybody that gets a hint of that branding being cool because they promote it as such, you're going to have an endless slew of people that are like, that's the most lame junk I've ever seen. And so humans are impossible, and thank goodness for that, in my opinion.
Well, in a lot of ways, that is, it's in some ways it's healthy, in some ways it's ridiculous, in some ways it's detrimental, in some ways it's just entertainment, and it is what it is. It just
Yeah,
exists, you
it's all
know.
those things.
Yeah, all at once. Um, I think personally, and it's just my cynicism and my opinion, I think personally, skepticism is healthy. Um, but then again, obstinance is another thing entirely.
It's
That's
another
not so
virtue.
healthy.
Oh, not so healthy. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
just the automatic, you know, the person that I'm talking to, in the face of incontrovertible fact. I'm holding a candle in my hand. You just touched it and pulled back and said, ow, but you refuse to believe that fire is hot. Nope, fire's not hot. You know people that way.
So I agree, but can I say one thing
Sure.
about that? So, and I think I'm like this that I'm about to tell you. If you, this is me
Mhm.
thinking, if you were to come and say, Eloy, the rocket engine produces this energy.
Mhm.
It could be you or anybody,
Yeah.
but let's say just you and me, just to make it.
Mhm.
And I will say, um, well, I would actually say, yeah, it produces energy.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not saying that you wouldn't say, you know, how,
Mhm.
but I'm saying, using this as an example, but I'll say, but I'm not ready. And although it's obvious that the rocket, I'm not ready to stop there. How does it produce energy? I want to know
Mhm.
exactly. And so then all the components that go into the actual finished product,
Mhm.
um, obviously that's an exaggeration, because
Sure.
I don't necessarily want to know what goes into every detail
Yeah.
of the rocket.
Yeah.
But on any given subject, just using this as an
Sure.
example, so if you say, well, the South, you know, fought the North over this issue principally,
Mhm.
which we had a conversation of a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's one point you actually made me, one of many, but um, one point that really shifted my it really shifted my thinking on the North South conflict, because I was totally in the camp of the states' rights
Mhm.
concept,
Mhm.
notwithstanding the idea of slavery is
Mhm.
disgusting,
Mhm.
and I but
Yeah.
the initiation of that conflict, I had the main thrust on the states' rights issue, but the you did sort of like explain the details of that in conversation. We didn't go into crazy details, but
No.
you mentioned key things that made me stop and reflect, and then I looked back into it, and the balance isn't just the state right. The whole racial thing was a very critical component
Mhm.
because they were used as labor. And so
Mhm.
anyway, so you had that point. I don't know, you still hold that it's not, it
Yeah.
wasn't state rights, right?
Well, states' rights was never even brought up as a subject until the 1870s, well into Reconstruction.
Okay, so during that one conversation long ago,
Mhm.
and we talked about that, I was totally, and by the way, when I'm totally into the thing, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that, yeah, that's in in
Well,
situations like this of history. I'm not just saying that, okay, I've decided on this and screw everything else. No,
right.
we can continue to understand.
Sure.
So that's one thing that changed my perception and whatever. I think conversations and things like that, we
Sure.
could be you could be very confident in one thing, but a piece of information comes in, and if you're willing to look at it,
Mhm.
and willing to be open-minded, can actually shift an idea. But humans are
Sure.
impossible in that you could present the same thing to somebody else, and if they're invested in a certain
If they're
way of,
invested in a point of view, there is nothing you or I going to do to change their
right,
minds. Exactly.
right, and the
And
truth be damned.
and usually when I say there's nothing you and I can say that's going to change their minds, those are the people that I'm talking about. The bullheaded ones to where you could hit them in the forehead with a hammer and they will refuse to believe that you have a hammer in your hand. You know,
Yeah,
just no, because you said it, it can't be correct. I know more than you. It can't be correct because you said it,
yeah.
you know.
um I think we should wrap up because we
I
have
think so too.
questions.
Okay.
um I do want to thank you guys for hanging out with us. We have a show after the show, but this one has concluded. We'll be back Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern and 6:30 Pacific Coast time. We are the Trampled Underfoot Podcast show, and you can catch previous episodes. We have a nice catalog of very interesting, including the lizard people. Some folks have been mentioning certain things out there in the chat, such as our lizard people episode, which is an interesting one. There's plenty of interesting stuff there, but we talk about history and all sorts of cultural, pop cultural stuff, music, and so on. So you can catch us on trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And you can also catch us on Facebook under Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast. So you guys be good, and we'll catch you next time. But we're also sponsored by.
I thought you were going to forget. I didn't think you were going to hand it off to me, man. I was thinking, where's he going? He's not already saying goodbye. Oh no, oh no. It's my edit. I'll keep this in. Yeah, we are sponsored. We are sponsored by Steve Nealon at Harneal Media, your one-stop website shop. If you're looking to establish your web presence or increase your web presence, Steve is your man. He's the guy who can help you out, do as much or as little as you want. He can design the website for you. He can host the website for you. He can set you up with a web store to accept electronic transfers, etc., etc., etc. And he can also set you up with a print on demand service. If you're thinking about merch, t-shirts, hats, etc., coffee mugs, he can hook you right up with that too. They worry about the shipping. You just sit back and watch the orders come in. It's that easy. I know. He sponsors my website and he sponsors the Trampled Underfoot podcast. You can find out more at Harneal Media. That's HARNEAL media.com.
All right, folks. Catch you later. Have a good one. We'll see you back again next time. See ya.
Take care. Boom. All right. Nice long blank so we can find the cut in the edit.
I need a long blank space for mine. So if you see on I don't know for yours, I think that you have a but for mine I need a little longer little
Mm-hmm.
space
Yeah.
when I do it because
Well,
it helps me see it.
I kind of zoom in a little bit on the waveform and then I scroll to about the 1 hour ish and I start looking for that blank spot and then I cut it.
I
So
do, but sometimes, but we're like a motorcycle, like we're revving and we push forward a little bit and then we stop
mhm.
and then we rev a little bit. Like you see the little lines, like
Yeah.
we rev and we stop a little bit and then we rev again. And so to find that, so I found that I do go to that 1 hour mark just about, but then I see us like we don't want to let it go.
What you mean we? Okay. Jim Dockrell sounds like he's older than Linda and I. He says, I was in bed at normal time on New Year's Eve, done that for years. Yeah. I mean, we now, and Linda makes the comment a little bit later on down here. Um, she has started a tradition. Since we've moved up here, she goes out on the front porch with her bagpipes at midnight and plays Old Lang Syne and maybe 3 or 4 other tunes. And they are loud. And as she says, it's paybacks to the neighbors who shoot off fireworks all night, July 4th, and used to terrorize our poor dog. Yeah, that is true. We used to have to drug our dog on New Year's and 4th of July because of the fireworks. So,
Yeah.
And then Jim says some people are generous and like to share. Yeah, Linda doesn't always listen to bagpipes, but when she does, so do the neighbors.
Yeah.
Steve has to work sick, he says. Yes, but you don't go to an office and infect everybody else, or go to a job site and infect everybody else. So, Jim Dockerell has a good one here. Saw the Florida Surgeon General making an announcement that they're stopping all this testing nonsense behind an early treatment save live sign. How do they know what to treat without a test? They automatically treat for COVID. That's what the doctor told us. They automatically treat you for that. If you are not showing symptoms enough to be hospitalized, they send you home and you treat yourself. That treatment is basically Tylenol to attempt to break the fever and any standard cold remedy that helps to relieve the congestion and free up the breathing. They automatically treat for COVID. What if you have to be hospitalized? They test you. That way they know if they need to sequester you or isolate you so you don't give it to somebody else. But if you go into the hospital thinking you have COVID, they may or may not give you a test. If you need to be hospitalized, they probably will. If you don't need to be hospitalized, it's up to you, basically.
I live in Florida, so
Mhm.
I've got some
Vested
thought
interest.
some thought on this. Um, I live in a part of Florida which happens to be one of the most populous, if not the most populous part of Florida.
I think it is.
So yeah, so but I don't live in a hospital or work in one, but I do have neighbors and people that I know, and it's a chain, right? It's like
Mhm.
you know your area to the extent that you know your area, and people are doing just as people have always done at this
Mhm.
point. But then again, I gave you that preamble there of I only know what I know. But it appears to me that you know, Florida, or at least my area, is doing pretty normal as normal is. So it just
Mhm.
it's I don't know about what hospitals this or that, but I mean they've been doctors and hospitals for a while, so I'm sure that they'll take those considerations under, you
Yeah.
know.
But and that was the whole point that the doctor was making to us. Getting a COVID test, if you want to get one, go ahead and get one. But at this point, because you don't need to be hospitalized, the only thing that test result is going to do is add to the statistics. That's all it's going to do, because it's not going to change. Because you have COVID doesn't mean they're going to automatically send you to the hospital and hospitalize
Yeah,
you.
COVID is not
That
the end of
doesn't happen.
it's not the end of the world, but it
Right.
may be the end of the world for some people. But
Right.
the end of the world for some people does not mean it's the end of the world. And
No.
in comparison to if you were to make a comparison,
Mhm.
it is better to be not sick than sick.
Mhm. Well, true.
But
Exactly. Okay.
but in the well, go ahead.
Well, but see, Jim is adding to this. What about a stroke, heart attack, bronchitis? Stroke and heart attack are not symptoms of COVID. Again, if you have to be hospitalized, a stroke, a heart attack, you know, they're going to test you for COVID so they know whether to put you in a ward with COVID patients or not. You need to be hospitalized. If you have bronchitis, they may or may not test you for COVID. If you've come in contact with fumes, they may or may not test you for COVID. Do you need to be admitted to the hospital?
I don't know. I'm not a doctor
No, no,
though.
yeah, but see, no. That's what I'm getting at. If you go to the hospital and you're being checked out for any of these things, a stroke, a heart attack, if you have to be admitted, you're probably going to be tested. If you don't have to be admitted, why?
People come
Why?
from people, just so that you know, that in terms of hospitals,
Mhm.
um, Florida, just like any Western
Yeah,
um like civilization,
yeah.
has the most advanced care and facilities and equipment, and in fact, people come here from around the world, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
for specific you know procedures,
Mhm.
um and so they have their thing, you know.
Yeah.
As far as human beings, um there there's have you ever seen the movie, this sounds ridiculous, but I'll just say, have you ever seen a movie where the guy, it's in a movie and they're fighting and the guy's injured and they take him to the hospital and stuff, and the doctor says, okay, you're gonna have to stay here overnight, and he says, doctor, I can't afford it, I've got a movie to finish and the audience will get sleepy, so he just leaps out and continues the movie. People are gonna do what the hell they want,
Yeah,
and so
they are. You're right.
you're the protagonist, we're all the protagonists of the,
Mhm.
but what do hospitals do? They do whatever Western civilization
And,
does.
and that's what the doc said. He said you can go down and you can get a COVID test, but it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change what I tell you to do.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, no,
not
no.
going to change that at all. The only thing it's going to do is it's going to add you to the statistics. I'm not telling you to go get it. All I'm telling you is if you call me back and say, I've got COVID, I'm going to say, okay, good. Don't come to my office. Stay home. Here's what you do, which is what he was doing anyway. He says, no, I don't know. Do you have COVID or do you not have COVID? I don't know that, but I'm going to assume that you do. And here's how you treat it. And we did that and we got better.
Yeah. But anyways,
You know,
regardless,
so
at the end of the day, we have Western civilization,
mhm,
and we have one of the institutions in Western civilization that are fairly on level with each other, because
mhm,
encompasses the
mhm,
advances of Western civilization, are
mhm,
hospitals,
mhm,
and within those hospitals you have the practice and research and methods that they use, and there may not be precisely the same level, but they're within a scope of the same level all across the Western world.
mhm,
And in those Western, in that Western world, with those Western disciplines and institutions, you have the people that populate those, and those people that populate those operate under the Western tradition of
mhm,
free autonomy, to one degree. That's also on a sliding scale, and it just so happens that in the greater continental United States, you have different states that operate differently according to states, and then within this state, you have but it's all within a range. So
sure.
it's not what might appear as detrimental
Mhm.
may be detrimental for sure, but it's
Well,
within a range of what we call the advances of modern science and the world, and I can't
well,
say anything other than that,
but there are other layers. I mean, he knows that both of us are retired. So we don't have a boss who's saying you got to get the vaccination or you can't go to work. We don't have that factor. Some people do. Some people are being threatened with their job, get it or get fired. I'm sorry for them. But we didn't have that consideration. So it was like getting tested is not important because I'm going to tell you to do the same thing, whether it's true or false. You
Yeah,
know.
it's the sort of thing like,
Yeah.
what it's valid to
Hmm.
ask the question, but I'm
Sure,
saying
it is.
that I'm not, like, whatever the practices are for
Hmm.
Florida as opposed to another country
Right.
or another state. It may sound like, well, wait a second, but in theory it all
Hmm.
falls under the scope of this, like,
Well,
Western civilization, and so one might say, well, they're crazy, but it's still not in the middle of a jungle with like a pair of tweezers pulling out your
right.
left
Well,
gut,
well, not only that, but treatments have changed. Back when this first started, and we didn't know anything about it, we were making it up as we went along. And when they finally came up with the test, everybody and their brother was being tested. Then pretty soon nobody was being tested because they kept running out of tests.
Yeah.
So reacting, it's not as important now as it was then, because the strains that are coming along that are, they may be more infectious, but they're not as lethal. In fact, they're just a minor annoyance in most cases. That's doing more for herd immunity than the vaccinations. Having those antibodies in your system is doing more for herd immunity than the vaccinations did.
Or so or so you assume.
Well, all you have to do is look at the hospitalization rates and the death rates. Now, it varies by region, but death rates from Delta and the original COVID virus are plummeting. They're going down. I mean, the death rate in the United States as of yesterday is 1.98%. That's the lowest it has ever been, and it's been a steady decline since its highest point in, I think that was March of 2020, when it hit 85%, because we didn't know what the hell was going on, you know. But the hospitalization rates on average as a whole, as a nation, are plummeting, along with the death rates. They're plummeting.
That's if we believe the statistics are accurate.
Well, that's why I always check 3 or 4 different sources.
But that's to assume. I'm making a point of, at some point we have
Mhm.
to, like, hold on to or grab onto or focus on some sort of piece of information. So that's assuming that all various sources are
Mhm.
not being manipulated for whatever their purpose.
That's true, but I mean, if they're being manipulated to continue the fear mongering and spreading panic, they're failing. They're failing miserably. That's like I said, people are war weary. They have battle fatigue. They're tired of it. They're sick and tired of it. I said from the outset of this, and here I go patting myself on the back. This is just like every other virus that we have ever encountered. We are going to live with it because we have never cured a virus, not one. We have treated symptoms. We have arrested the spread, but we have never cured a virus.
Well, let's go to
So
the
we're going to learn to live with this the way we do with the flu every year and the way we do with everything else every year.
let's go to the next
Yeah,
question, because
that's
we've
what
kind
I'm
of
doing now.
yeah.
Well, yeah, we're preaching to the choir. Steve jumped in and said the bots are active together. Thank you for catching that one. I didn't see it. I caught one earlier,
Yeah.
but thank you for catching that one, Steve. Steve with the wrench. He's our enforcer out there. Okay. Rick French says true and false as determined by pure science or mathematics are near irrefutable. To a point, science does change every once in a while as we develop our technology, but yeah, for the most part, I'm with you. True and false as determined by belief, feeling, religion, politics, or any other intangible will always be argued. Yes, I will agree with that as well.
Yeah, even the tangible.
Yeah.
If you say anything out the gate,
Hmm.
even if it's darn provably true, people can just as well. Now, that said, people that are persistent and insisting on a falsehood that can be, you know, proven with quite the amount of and whatever that might be. They're doing that, you know, for whatever reason that they're doing it, but they're not to be taken. Anybody that takes a topic serious will look at somebody that says something like that. Like, for instance, my thing about Mick Jagger and the thing. Is that really, am I being serious? Really? I'm not. It's so
But see, that's, yeah.
But anybody that takes the Rolling Stones serious and what they've accomplished and all the details and stuff will come and say, this guy's not. And so it's only as useful as it's useful.
Yeah. And that kind of dovetails in with your talking about the conversations that people have and how much you want to get into it. To me, casual conversation is not food for serious analysis. I'm asking you how the weather is. Don't give me the barometric pressure. I'm just asking you, is it raining? Is it sunny? Are you stuck in a house? What's going on? You know, that's all. Let's see. Rick French also says, I had never heard of the lizard people until I started watching this podcast series. So, see, we are an educational show. You never know. As Linda says, amazing what you can learn here, ain't it? Yeah.
The lizard people. So imagine, we basically, and it's not like you wouldn't have ran into it in some. No. I can't say because it's such an insane. But you ran into it because we were doing that and whatever and this and that, and that's like a thing that you said. Oh, well, look at this, and who knows what you think about it. But that's a whole weird thing where a lot of people are invested in it, and you know, what are you gonna do? There's people that literally, you know, they can stamp it with an approval according to their standards that it's true. And you know, and so what can you do about that? Now, you can believe, and I know you guys know this out there, but I'm just saying for the heck of it, you can believe that the lizard people, and you can believe that Jupiter and Mars, and you can believe whatever you want. But from belief to, we're gonna have to eliminate those people over there. Come on, let's go over there and get. So there's a line to everything. So, but the area, the sphere of gray matter of the mind, is open for, you know, whatever, and that is actually the most dangerous. The mind is the most dangerous because the ideas that one can conceive of, that's where the danger is, and the apparatuses used to implement crossing that line are just the extensions of it. But and that's what in my opinion, and this is conspiracy, but in my opinion, that's what people that want to control humanity, to whatever extent, maybe to sell a product, and they want to sell your mind on the idea that what they're selling is the way to go, buddy. And
you said the key word, selling.
Yeah, but selling, I meant it monetarily, but it can also apply to selling of a concept, be it religion or be it, you know, so it's the idea of transferring a truth that, or a lie that they want you to ingrain into yourself. It sounds conspiratorial, but on the level of like advertising, it's basically that they want to convince the buyer that, hey, my product is badass. And the intent is that they want the monetary, but there's other intents. The government wants you to believe patriotically on a sliding scale throughout history, in the notion of the country and the integrity of the country, be it the United States or Canada or this or that. And so there's all these layers, and the idea is to convince, you know, they want to convince people to fall in line with a certain thing. That's just part of the whole design. The problem is that I may love Charmin because it's double ply with a nice sprinkle of perfume, but if you increase the price cost point too much to me, I'll go ahead and buy sandpaper number 893 and go to town. So
they're gonna find that line. But they're gonna find that line and stay just under it.
Notice I went straight from Charmin to sandpaper 893.
Those are basically your options right about now. So you know. Let's
Do you
see.
like a little grit in your
It,
in your daily
I
routine?
I think people. I think somebody here is taking exception to me saying we've never cured a virus. Smallpox is caused by a virus, yes, and we have never cured one case of smallpox. We vaccinated a population, and the last reported case was in the 1970s. So we never cured a single case of smallpox. We vaccinated people, and they didn't catch it anymore. And it's the
But
same
that's
thing. And it's the same thing with polio. We never cured a single case of polio. We vaccinated people. And when herd immunity took over, the instances of polio reduced. Now, polio is not gone. Smallpox is gone. But there are cases of polio today, generally speaking, in Africa and deep Asia. But and they are still on a steady decline.
but that's a good argument that right there
Mm-hmm.
for our institutions wanting everybody vaccinated with this. That right there is a
Yes, you're
perfect.
absolutely right. But my issue is study it first.
But
You know,
folks back then, right? So I'm not trying
right?
but folks back then weren't. They didn't have access to like, the internet and conspiracy theories.
No,
I mean, they did in certain ways with books and whatnot and this and that. But but they didn't have. So they just either took it or didn't take, or who knows what. But I mean,
they
it,
made it mandatory to go to school. I still remember all of the shots that I took uh, to go to school every year. And the polio vaccine was real easy. It was a drop of pink stuff on a sugar cube, and we loved it because we got to suck on the sugar cube. You know, all the rest of them I didn't really like. I mean, I have the smallpox vaccine scar on my shoulder right there.
my dad, my mom,
That
everybody from
was,
that.
but that was done when I was an infant.
Yeah.
You know, it was done. It was the way it was put was you don't want your kids to get that. I did have whooping cough as a baby. I don't remember it. I don't know nothing about it, but I was told by my mother, my grandmother on both sides, yes, you had the whooping cough. I don't know anything about it, but I was too young to get the immunizations for it. So, yeah, Rick French. I remember in grade school having to eat the sugar cube with the pink drops. It wasn't a case of have to, it was a case of can I get in line twice? You know, of course, I was just a greedy kid. What can I say? So
So if they
let's
gave it,
see.
what if they gave this one with a cube with pink drops on it? They
That
did
was the
that with
polio vaccine.
no, but what if they did this one? I know it's not gonna, but I'm saying if they, in other words, if they presented it in a enticing, even more enticing way like that,
Mhm.
I would bet that a percentage more would completely be, oh, what, sugar cubes? Let's go, family.
Yeah, there might be. There might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Rick French, and I know Rick French works. He is. You're a fire chief, if I'm not mistaken, aren't you, Rick? Or something. You know, you're up in first responders. Part of the problem is that people are calling an ambulance for a hangnail because they want a COVID test to see a medical professional. Yes, you are always going to have that. And I don't have to tell you to look as close as your closest emergency room and see the people out there waiting who do not have a medical emergency. They don't have a family doctor, and that's the only place they get their medical care is the emergency room. Okay, a retired chief. Okay, okay. I'm sure you've got more war stories than I could ever even think about getting. But you know as well as I do that there is a whole percentage of the population out there that does not have a doctor because they think they can't afford one. They'd rather go to the emergency room for a headache.
Some people have a witch doctor instead of just a doctor.
And you know, I asked, I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I asked my doctor one time, okay, I know for a fact because I've got the invoices, I've seen all the charts and the receipts and everything else. I know that going to my doctor, we have two insurance companies. They charge $125 for an office visit. And I said, okay, I kind of fabricated a friend and said he doesn't have insurance. If he wanted to come to you to get seen, what do you charge for somebody without insurance for an office
$50.
visit? $65.
Okay.
And I think he saw through it because he said, look, I charge $125 in your case because I have to. That's what Medicare pays. I have to charge what Medicare pays. If I don't, I run afoul of a bunch of insurance companies. I have to charge what Medicare pays. I said, okay, you don't have to justify it to me. But the people who think they can't afford a doctor, they can. And it's not like they're not going to let you out of the building if you don't pay that $65. They will bill you.
And if
they
in
will
Miami,
pay you. They
and
will
if
take
in
payments.
and if in Miami, you can also do the alternate medicine of a witch doctor. All you need to do with that is bring a chicken and goat hair with you on your first visit.
That's not just Miami. That's not just Miami.
And paint. If you want to lower the cost, bring your own paint because they paint the chest. And I'm inventing stuff right now. By the way,
do they go for the blue or the green?
I was thinking in my mind. I was thinking red. I was thinking some sort of red and like the paint.
Well, it may be original thing because up here it's blue.
and like flames and stuff.
Yeah,
the
local Jedi shaman, they paint you blue. They haven't invented a real lightsaber yet, so he uses a blackboard pointer. That's sprayed neon pink, and they wave it 3 times over your head, say, "Oh, kill you!"
Did you know the king of I think it was the king of Spain during one of the plagues of the bubonics?
Mm-hmm.
So at that time they controlled Sicily and the Netherlands. It just all basically just Europe was a huge thing. But he believed, I've read, that the reason for the pestilence was that an earthquake in Italy cracked open such a deep crevice in the earth that gases and spirits from hell came out, and that was what was killing people.
Well, this is what I was talking about with science changing as technology advances. It was perceived for centuries that illness was caused by bad air, that you got sick by breathing in bad air. The name for malaria, the disease malaria, means literally bad air.
Mal being bad and area mean air.
Air, yes. And we talked about it before.
Wait, it's mean
French.
Could mean, well, it's Latin rooted. It's malaria. Okay. It's all of it is Latin rooted, so it all matches. Mal is bad. It comes from malo, or whatever variation going back into the Latin. Okay. But area.
But what I'm getting at is hold on, don't take area as holy writ, because that was an Anglicization of the French for malaria. Whatever they said, we just kind of anglicized it and adopted that name, and we called it malaria. I'm not sure that that's what they call it.
No,
in French.
I don't. Then I don't know. But the word itself, you can extract, because you can extract. That's another conversation. Mm-hmm. All these words have roots that go back into Latin. I mean, even scientifically, all the naming conventions go back to Latin. So
there's actually 3. There's the Romance, the Slavic, and the Germanic.
All those go back. They go back to, in science, a Latinized. So if you look at trees, the way they name them.
Oh, you're talking about in science? Yes, it's Latin or Greek, one of the two.
Yeah. So they go back to those
yes
early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see here. BBD. Dan Haryu says Mick Jagger is lizard people if anyone is. You can look at Keith Richards and say Mick Jagger is lizard people. Okay.
You missed Jim Dockrell saying something about the end of the world. Some sort of, he said something earlier. It was more of a statement.
About
Mark of the Beast. He said.
Yes, the smallpox scar, the smallpox vaccine scar.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't scroll up high enough. Sorry about that. Rick French says, I have a friend who has spent much of his adult life chasing Sasquatch. Everybody needs a hobby. He even has a YouTube channel for Sasquatch chasers. And we need those people. I know a couple here. Well, I knew a couple here. I don't know if they're still alive. I really don't. Here in the Rogue Valley, Southern Oregon, who were Sasquatch hunters. And they spent, oh my God, years traipsing around out in the woods, following stories and reports and this, that, and the other. We need those people out in the woods. They need to be out there. Then that's the only way we're going to find out yes or no.
No, but not only that, if they're interested just because they're interested for the hell of it, and they might stumble across other things that aren't pertaining to Sasquatch that are of value, or
exactly my point. We need those people out there. Yes, I'm all
or just
for
the sheer effect of people enjoying them doing something that we don't know. Maybe there's a secret out there. I mean, just it's all good.
I've got a little secret to tell, Rick. Maybe not to the level your friend is, but if you live in the Pacific Northwest, you have grown up hearing stories about Sasquatch all your life. Everybody that goes out of the city is a Sasquatch hunter, because believe me, everybody standing next to a lake is looking around. So everybody that goes camping or fishing or hunting in the Pacific Northwest is a Sasquatch hunter. Like I said, they don't have YouTube channels and they're not dedicating photographic equipment, but believe me, they're watching. So let's see. I think we're more or less caught up. Jim Dockrell says fires in his area got fewer right after his retirement. Oh, ouch. Then Rick says no, fires are about the same. Future parking lots are far less. There you go. Jim Dockrell says my mother-in-law goes to a guy with a bone through his nose and reads the chicken guts to diagnose. Oh, he was an army doctor, huh? That was what we had. He had a bone in his nose. The flight surgeon had a bone in his nose and a bear paw on a stick. He'd shake it over your head twice and say, go back to duty. Here, take these Motrin.
But although we joke, if that's what you grew up, so if you are in a tribe and who knows how long, and excluding modern and the throwing of bones in a certain direction and is the going consensus and stuff, it's like that's all these people have available. And maybe there's one guy that says, well, wait a second, maybe the bone tossing ain't that good. They're liable to take that guy and shred him to bits. And that's not good either. What's good is if that tribe said there are people that maintain this practice and there are others that are opposed, and there's creativity and variation, and then that tribe becomes more modern. In other words, the here's me defending the West. We're at where we're at because of opposing ideas and concepts and positions.
Yes, and repeated testing and repeated, trying to prove or disprove.
Yeah.
And I won't poo-poo all of that quote unquote native medicine, because that's where the cure for malaria came from. Was certain, I hesitate to call them tribes, but certain people in Asia learned that the bark of a tree, cinchona bark, you boil cinchona bark and basically make a tea out of it. It's high in quinine, And that is the treatment that is still today one of the big treatments for malaria. And so we did get quite a bit of our medicine. We've
Is
since been able to isolate and synthesize quinine, but a good deal of our medicines do come from plant extracts that have been tested, extracted, and synthesized to be able to put it out on the massive scale, you know.
is malaria the same as what
It's a
was
tropical disease spread by Anopheles mosquitoes.
um because there's a thing, is it the same as yellow fever?
No.
Okay.
Yellow fever came from it is a, I don't know if it's microbial or
It's because
bacterial or a viral infection. I really
it's
don't.
it's a mosquito, and it's
Okay.
viral infection. And the reason I brought that is because I remember our conversation. A It was discovered that a mosquito transmits it.
Mhm.
And that was a discovery from a Carlos Finley, which was a Cuban, Irish, or Cuban, just say British. I don't remember if he was a like doctor guy back in
Mhm.
18 or actually he died in 1915, but he was born in 1833 in
Mhm.
Camagüey, Cuba. But I'm wondering, is that not before the malaria? Because malaria, or what's
Well,
the timeline on that?
malaria, I mean, well, okay, yellow fever was named after the Yalu River in China. That's where that name came from. But it was all kind of during the age of exploration. I mean, the 14 and 1500s when Europeans started coming into contact with these diseases, because we didn't deal with mosquitoes, or not the Anopheles mosquitoes. We didn't deal with, like, malaria is actually a parasite in the mosquito that gets transmitted to the blood when the mosquito is biting you. So I'm not sure about yellow fever.
Yellow fever is transmitted from infected to healthy humans by a mosquito.
Okay. Well, malaria is transmitted the same way, but malaria is a serious and sometimes fatal disease caused by a parasite that commonly affects a certain type of mosquito which feeds on humans. And that is the Anopheles mosquito, basically. But it's a parasite in the mosquito that causes malaria.
Illness ranges for yellow fever from a fever, which implies with aches and pains, to severe liver disease with bleeding
Yeah.
and yellowing skin, jaundice.
Mhm.
Yellow fever infection is diagnosed based on laboratory testing, a person's symptoms, and travel history.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a few of them that. So mosquitoes aren't necessarily well, they do serve some function, but
Yes, they do. Their mosquitoes are also, see, because it's only the female mosquito that bites. The male mosquito,
yes.
they no, they're pollinators. They go for nectar from flowers and what have you. So
Right.
mosquitoes do play a role in the pollination of plants and flowers, trees and what have you.
Right. And how about the bees? Are the males that do the job, right? Of
Yes,
jumping from place to place, and then
that's the males. Yes.
the female bee has the hive and controls
The
the
queen, just her job is to lay eggs.
to lay eggs.
That's it.
Um, yeah. Okay. Because I know that there's also killer bees.
Yeah, the Africanized honeybees. Yes.
Yeah. So even these adorable beneficial things have a counterpart side where if you mess with them, they
Yeah.
will retaliate. So
Yes.
it's like it's
Well,
like everything, it's humans also have.
this is apropos of absolutely nothing at all. Then I think we should wrap it up. Did
Yeah.
you know honeybees are not native to North America?
No, were they South American?
Nope, they were brought over from Europe. In fact, the species that we have that buzz around in Florida, here in Oregon, and everything is the European honeybee. They were brought over from Europe.
Oh.
When it was the British, the Spanish, and the French, all of them, when they first started colonizing North America, they couldn't figure out why their crops weren't growing. And it turns out that the reason for that was because there were no bees here to pollinate it. So a few people decided to bring a few hives over with them. And so all of the honeybees in North America are imported. They're the European honeybee.
It was introduced from Europe for honey production in the early 1600s.
Yep.
Okay. So subspecies were introduced from Italy and Spain, Portugal, and elsewhere. Wow, I didn't know that. I thought that, well, I didn't think anything of it. I would have assumed that bees just existed here, but like other things, like, you know, certain animals and all that were introduced into
most of our normal food crops that we grow here in America are not native too. They were all brought over from somewhere else.
That's another interesting topic. Maybe one day we can touch on that. What did the Americas provide Europe as far as like foods and whatnot?
Big list.
And vice versa. That would be a good topic to see what all different, and including inventions. Well, see, that's different. Maybe natural resources or natural like animals and stuff, and plant life too. That would be an interesting conversation.
Yep, I think you're right.
The bees.
Okay, we have been corrected. I have been corrected. Worker bees are female. The drone bees are male. Okay, and the drones are the ones who attend to the queen, and the worker bees out there's collecting the nectar and everything to make honey. They're female. Okay.
Wow.
Thank you, Google.
So drones meaning what though?
They attend to the queen. That's their whole job.
So they're stuck inside the hive all the time.
Right.
They can't go out for a drink.
Nope, and neither can the queen.
She can't either because she's being protected by the drones and such.
Exactly.
Very interesting. You know, that's one thing. Bees are something that when one sees one, even though you can get bit by them, but they're so fluffy, their little thing in the back of the abdomen, and you're like, but when you see a wasp, you're like,
yeah, there is absolutely nothing about a wasp that makes me think anything other than kill it.
Yeah, but you see, and I know that they're not obviously they're not the same, but they have the same little. They're more or less they're in the little creature area of the you know, but the wasp seems like he's ready for murder, and the bee seems
the
like
wasp and the hornet both. It's just kill it. You are the enemy.
Whereas the bee looks like he's just out doing a little job when you see him. But the hornets and these others, it looks like they're incoming. Here he comes. Here's a human. Yeah. It looks like they're intent on this murder.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not nice people.
They're not being nice. All right.
Okay.
All right.
We need to end this. All right. God knows what we'll talk about next week, but thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for hanging around and sticking with us in this goofy podcast. And good to see you out there. And it's good to be back. And we'll see you next week, I guess.
And for those lizard people that are intermingled and sort of under the radar that are in the chat room and stuff, we know who you are. So don't think that we're oblivious. We know what's going on around here.
Reptilian individuals, use the back door, please.
Have a good night, guys.
Take care.